I love the slow fi movement. Many retirements, coast fi, enjoying your life along the way. That's been a huge part of my journey. But there have also been seasons where I've wanted to hit the gas, where I'm motivated, I'm focused, I'm willing to put in the effort to move faster. And if you're in one of those seasons right now, how do you actually fast track financial independence, especially without burning out or hating your life? That's exactly what we're getting into today with Cody Berman, the author of Retire by 30. And despite the title, this isn't just for people in their 20s. This is a playbook for anyone who wants to accelerate their path to FI. We're going to be breaking down the 2 paths to financial independence, how to increase your income fast, and how to stay intentional with your spending while you do it. If you're ready to make real progress, you're going to enjoy this episode with Cody Berman. In our community, SlowFi has become really popular. I mean, you've been a part of the financial independence community for over a decade now, and you've probably seen this shift to people becoming much more intentional about enjoying the journey. How do you think about sustainability and enjoyment while also pursuing FI so aggressively?
This was one of my biggest headbutt moments with the FI community back in 2017, 2018 when I discovered it. And even a lot of the FI superstars and creators were telling me, hey, Cody, you should stick it out in the corporate job. A lot of people in the FI community will use that phrase, to put your nose to the grindstone. It's like the most gruesome analogy. But they'll say to do that for 5 to 10 years, to hit that FI number, and then you coast off into the sunset. And I'm like, no, I'm going to enjoy the journey. I'm going to build my financial freedom foundation while I'm actually living a life that I want to live, not putting my nose to the grindstone for 10 years just to hit some magic number. So I think this message is more important than ever. And it's one that I've been preaching since, again, 2018 when I first started doing this thing, to the chagrin of many of the big creators out there who are just go, go, go.
So do you feel like, kind of reflecting back on your short journey to financial independence, you had a lot of fun while also like doubling down on making more income and reducing your expenses?
100%. Yeah, I do not feel at any point during my journey was I deprived. If you were like to interview one of my friends from the outside during we can get into the story, but I had basically a 3-year financial freedom sprint from 22 to 25. I just went crazy with entrepreneurship. I was extremely frugal. But it wasn't like I was just not doing anything. I wasn't locked in a basement, just staring at my computer for 20 hours a day. Like I was still having fun, going out, doing things with my friends. I was just doing things slightly more intentionally, and that made all the difference. So yeah, not at any point during my journey did I feel deprived in any way.
Probably pre-gaming harder at home versus buying drinks out at the bar.
That is exactly right. Exactly. Yeah, you get it. I was 22 years old. I'm still going to the bar. I'm just, maybe my friends are buying like 5 drinks out. I'm buying like 1 and just pre-gaming at home.
Well, you mentioned entrepreneurship. I'm curious. You made a lot of money as an entrepreneur, but as an entrepreneur myself, I know that path can be uncertain and take some time. If someone wanted to fast track FI, how would you think about choosing between a 9-to-5 or an entrepreneurship? Are there like certain characteristics or personality traits that you think might suit someone better?
I think it's a math problem and a psychology problem. So a lot of people hear me speak, they know I'm an entrepreneur, and they think that I'm just like a side hustle guy. Like, screw the 9-to-5, you're an idiot if you stay in corporate. Not at all. I see a lot of people where if your corporate job is the fastest path to increase your income and maximize the gap between your income and your expenses, and you don't mind doing that corporate job, my God, do that. Like one of my buddies, Justin David Carl, he kind of had the same FI journey as me, but in his mid-30s. I'm actually glad you gave that shout out at the beginning, Justin, where you mentioned this doesn't have to be like your sub 20 or sub 30. You can do this at any age. Like you could do the financial freedom sprint from 35 to 38, or from 45 to 48, or from 50 to 53. Like whatever 3-year stint you want to do, you can do it. But my buddy Justin, he did basically a 3-year sprint from like, I think it was 33 to 36, call it. But he was in corporate. He was in a corporate sales job. And so he just like hammered the income button in that corporate sales job, didn't really lean into side hustles whatsoever, got his income like multiples higher than it was before. And that was his path to hit FI. Now, other folks, you might be working in a job where you're fighting to get a 0.5% raise at the end of the year. You don't have any kind of variable compensation based on your performance. You don't have commission, anything like that. For someone like that, a side hustle might make perfect sense. So I really think it depends on your personal situation. So like, look at the numbers. Can you make more money in your day job? Can you make more money side hustling? And then your psychology. If you don't mind doing something to make extra money, then do that thing. If it's something where you're just, quote, going back to that same quote, putting your nose to the grindstone just to make an extra $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, that might not be for you because that's not sustainable. Going back to that word you mentioned, the whole point of this journey is sustainability. If you are just like brute forcing your way through just to hit some magic number, at some point it's going to give. And at some point you're just going to be like, I can't do this anymore. I would need to hit the brakes. I'm going to give up. But if you can create a FI journey that you actually enjoy living, then you're not sacrificing. You're not deprived along the way. So it just becomes a way of life. It doesn't become something that you're giving up.
Yeah, Justin David Carl was on the show. That was in the spring, episode 195, if you want to go back and listen to his journey. Very similar to yours, just in terms of timeline. But it is interesting when you bring him up, looking at it from a W-2 lens or a 9-to-5 lens versus the entrepreneurship route. And it can be great for either direction. Both take intentionality, and there's got to be some effort that has to go into either becoming a top performer, asking for raises, maybe job changing or career changing, or for entrepreneurship, it takes a lot of work to get started, to find clients, to build a product, to sell. So I think both are going to take the same amount of effort, but it might just depend where you're at or where you're starting with and what interests you. And you can always think about springboarding out of your 9-to-5 and into entrepreneurship. I have lots of friends that essentially carry both for about a year and then springboard into entrepreneurship with a little bit of the safety that they built from the 9-to-5.
Even if you do love your corporate job, even if you're crushing it in your day job and you do have the Justin David Carl situation where you have this like variable comp and you can scale your income to the moon, there is so much power in a side hustle. Even if you're just making your first dollar online outside of a job, like with a boss, there's something so freeing about that, because if and when you ever do want to quit, like let's say all of a sudden your boss leaves and now all of a sudden this new boss gets planted in there and they suck and you hate them and you haven't built any kind of an exit strategy, like you haven't tried your hand at entrepreneurship or side hustling, it's a lot scarier than if you already have this side hustle income that you're like, right now it's only making $100 or $500 or $1,000 a month. But if I lose this day job, I can just dial that way, way up. And all of a sudden now I have this other income stream. So I'm a huge proponent of side hustling, even if your main strategy for hitting FI is in the day job, just because now you have this additional safety net. And not to mention the skills that you gain from side hustling are things you will never, ever lose. My friend and the guy who wrote the foreword for my book, Grant Sabatier, says skills are future currency. It's one of my favorite quotes because you can lose your titles, you can lose your money, you could lose your house. One thing that can never be taken from you are the skills that you gain along the way. And that's why you've seen that show like Undercover Billionaire, where they drop like Grant Cardone in the middle of Indiana with no phone and no friends, and all of a sudden he has $1 million business in like 3 months. Is it scripted? Maybe, but like maybe. But honestly, someone who has already built that many companies to that level, they can do it again infinitely faster because you can't take away the skills. You can take away the tools, the resources, the people, but the skills stay.
No doubt. I totally agree with that. So I definitely think picking entrepreneurship 9-to-5 is part of probably the general fast track strategy. I think another thing to consider here, which you talked about in your book, Retire by 30, is these two separate paths to financial independence, the nest egg method and the cash flow method. Can you break down each?
So most people are probably familiar with the nest egg method. This is your traditional 4% rule. You save up 25x your expenses, invest it in the stock market, and you can live on that portfolio in perpetuity. So that was the way that I had always heard FI talked about when I jumped into this world. It was like Mr. Money Mustache, Mad Fientist, Choose FI, Early Retirement Extreme. Everyone was just talking about this 4% rule. And I was like, do I really have to save up $1.5 million if I want to live on $60K for the rest of my life? Then I discovered this whole other world, which was cash flow FI. So cash flow FI is basically you just need to generate enough passive or semi-passive cash flow each month to cover your expenses with maybe a little bit of a buffer. So in that same scenario, let's say I want to spend $60,000 per year. Instead of having to save up $1.5 million invested, I just have to figure out how I can make $5,000 per month in passive or mostly passive income. That could be in the form of small business, real estate, digital products, you name it. There's a lot of different ways to get there, but I had seen and talked to so many people that had done this supercharged path to FI via cash flow FI. And that's when I like really started diving in hardcore in probably 2019, 2020. Up to that point, I was stocking away all my money into the market. And I was like, okay, I'm going to save up $1.5 million and yada, yada, yada. But then I learned about cash flow FI and I'm like, okay, I've seen people do this in 2 to 3 years. Let's see what I can do.
And what did you end up doing whenever you actually hit financial independence at 25? Were you more on the nest egg side or on the cash flow method side?
So to give people I know we have a lot of spreadsheet nerds in this audience, myself included. So right when I hit FI, these are the kind of the layout of the numbers. I had $500K about invested in the stock market. So that's like $20,000 per year per the 4% rule. I had 11 rental properties bringing in net cash flow, $3,700 a month. So this is net, this is PITI, CapEx, maintenance, all that stuff. It's not just the rent minus mortgage, real estate guru stuff you see online. And then I had a digital products business that was bringing in about $10,000 per month in mostly passive income. And it was at that point, I'm like, okay, I'm fine. So it was kind of a combo approach, Justin. It was, I did have the nest egg. Like, it wasn't like I was neglecting my retirement accounts and index funds. I was still doing that, but I was also building this real estate portfolio, also building a passive income business on the side.
I love the combination of the approach that you took there. But the one thing that worries me a little bit on the cash flow method side is like the overhead or the maintenance that might be required with that. If I'm reaching financial independence and I want flexibility or freedom from work, I would be cautious to be a landlord over 11 units, or running a business, a digital product business that's doing $120,000 a year. How did you manage some of the workload that came along with some of the cash flow that you were taking in?
Systems. Systems are everything. If you can build out good systems, you barely have to work as long as you have the right systems running and the right people running those systems. Like, at some point, like, you can completely scale yourself out of businesses. There's a reason why, hate him or love him, there's a reason why Elon Musk can run now $1 trillion company, multiple $1 billion companies. It's because of systems. It's not because he has more hours in the day than all of us. Like, he's doing way, way more than, I mean, the entire FI community combined in terms of like top line revenue. But again, he doesn't have more hours in the day than any of us. It's because of systems. So tiny little me compared to him, like, I have systems for all my businesses. So I can legitimately, back when we had, the 11 units doing $3,700 a month, I was probably spending 4 to 5 hours a month total on management in those properties, maybe an hour a week. And you always hear like, oh, I don't want to be a landlord. I don't want to get a 2 a.m. call with the toilet. I'm like, well, first of all, like, these people aren't calling me. We have a system set up where they put in like a maintenance request. Second of all, I'm not going there and fixing the toilet. I don't even know how to do that. The plumber's going there and fixing the toilet, like, and it's going to get handled the next morning when the service request comes through. Like, I think a lot of people play out these doomsday scenarios in their head of like, this is just one example of real estate, but of what it looks like to be a landlord or a business owner or you name it. And if you have the right systems in place, those things don't happen. And when they do happen, then they're easily handled because you already have the systems, the SOPs, the standard operating procedures. You know exactly how to handle it. So that's how I was able to manage all that without having to like be super stressed if I had a crazy week or something like that.
And the nice thing is, as you gain more and more financial independence, you can inflate the systems. I don't know if that's the right word, but you can worry less about the margin, the profit margin, if that means that you can build a system that allows you to get further removed from that process. You know, you might have been self-managing your properties when you started, but eventually moving to a property manager, building in even more capabilities so that you can step out of this and still have your small part in all of this business too.
100%. Yeah. At some point, like, as my income started to rise, I was at first just trading a lot of my time for money straight up. But then as the income started to rise from those businesses, now there's more margin to play with. And then I could hire someone to handle emails. I could hire someone to manage the community. I could hire someone to go live. I could hire someone to help with websites, versus before, that was all me. But at some point, you start to build the machine. And as the machine starts to grow, then you have more profits that get spit out. And then with those profits, then you can, again, you build the system, put the people in the system, and voila, you have a semi-passive income stream.
Let's keep talking about fast tracking strategies here. And I think probably of the two, you talked a little bit about the gap here, you know, income minus expenses. I think of the two, probably the one that's got to make a bigger difference is increasing your income. You can really only get down to zero whenever it comes to expenses, but you have almost infinite opportunity when it comes to increasing your income. And you're someone that at one point in time made $400,000 in 1 year. So I'm curious, how'd you do that? And do you think that's possible for most people?
Do I think that's possible for most people? I have trouble answering this question sometimes because people have different scenarios, different circumstances. Do I think every single person can exactly replicate my journey? No. And I hope people don't have that takeaway. But what I will say is I think people really underestimate themselves, and they have a lot more opportunity to grow the gap on both sides than they might give themselves credit for. So yeah, I don't know if I can answer that question. Like, can everyone make $403,000, which is what I made in that third year of financial freedom? I don't know. Like, some people make more than that. Some people make less than that. What the key difference was, like, how I lived differently from other people also doing that, because at that time I was in masterminds and I was I was shaking hands with entrepreneurs, like real estate investors, other folks who were making that much money or more. But what they weren't doing was what I was doing on the expense side. So during that year I made $403,000, I was spending $2,000 a month. I spent $24,000 that year. My gap was $379K. So I had like $200K to invest in the stock market. The other 180-ish K, I was buying rental properties. And so at the end of that year, that 403K year, that's when I hit 5 because I had all this firepower to just invest in these tried and true asset classes. So I think a lot of people don't put enough emphasis on the gap. I just saw it last week in a Facebook group. People are like battling over, should they invest in VOO or VTSAX? And I'm just like face palming. I'm like, just figure out how to make like a couple thousand extra dollars via a side hustle or via your day job, if that's possible. And like those small decisions don't matter. When the 0.03% decisions matter, that's when you're a billionaire and you're probably not in a Facebook group asking for advice at that point. So I think people get like so bogged down in the minutia of like, what should I invest in? Is it this exact stock or this exact stock? Should I do a target date fund or should I do the, golden ratio? Like there's all these crazy different scenarios that people like to lay out, but it's like, you cannot go wrong if you just have a massive gap between your income and your expenses, and that's just invest in the general market in like any old total stock market index fund.
I want to come back to expenses because I can't believe that you were only spending $200,000 a month at that time. But let's stay on increasing income for a second. Let's say that you have a mentee who's 22 out of college and does want to fast track to FI. And he knows or she knows that the fastest path is increasing their income. They're making $40,000 at a W-2 job right now. What are some of the biggest levers that you think they should be pulling in the next couple of years to help them increase their income the fastest?
Okay, so depends on the W-2 job. If they're in a sales role and they can scale that $40,000 to $200,000 by making some extra calls every day and crushing their software sales role or whatever that might be in, hammer that. Maybe start a side hustle on the side, but again, depends. Actually, let's take a step back because I want to kind of spell out the 4 types of side hustles. I think this will be helpful framing for me to answer this question. So in the book, I basically lay out all the different types of side hustles because I've tried 30 plus. So type 1 side hustles is trading your time for money. So this could be freelance writing, podcast editing, video editing, building websites. These are all ones I've done. Landscaping, cleaning boats. These are all ones I've done. Type 2 is scalable side hustles. So this is putting your time, your energy, your money into something, and then that something will then pay you for decades to come. This could be real estate, this could be a small business, this could be digital products. Again, it's something where you put your time, your energy, your effort in once, and then that thing can pay you, not in perpetuity, but hopefully for decades to come. Type 3 is what I like to call the sharing economy. So this is your Airbnbs, Turo, Get Around for cars. Now there's sharing economy platforms. You can rent out your pool, your power tools, your photography equipment, your trampoline, your bouncy house. Like there is a market for everything now, your extra storage space. Type 4 is the agency model for type 1. So if type 1 is freelance writing, then type 4 is like the agency model for that, which would be you have a freelance writing company. You start to build the systems I was talking about earlier. You hire people under you. Now you're selling like these freelance writing packages and boom, you've kind of scaled yourself out of the business in a sense. Or you're doing type 1 dog walking, then all of a sudden you have this dog walking business and you have a bunch of dog walkers that work under you and boom, you have a semi-passive business. These are all real examples, by the way, from the book that I've done or that I've had friends who've done in the past. But to go back to your example where there's the 22-year-old making 40K, I would say lean in to type 2 side hustles as much as you can. So at the beginning of my journey, I was doing mostly type 1 side hustles. These are kind of the side hustles that helped me escape corporate. So I was freelance writing, freelance podcast editing, freelance video editing, building websites for people, running affiliate marketing systems, running email campaigns for people. Like I was doing everything that I possibly could, just trading my time straight up to increase my income as much as I possibly could. At some point though, I didn't have more hours to trade. And so I'm like, what can I do where I can put the effort in once and then this thing is going to start paying me in perpetuity? That's when I started leaning hard into type 2, which is pretty much exclusively the types of businesses that I have today. Like my 3 big income streams today, Justin, are my digital products business, my real estate, and then my personal finance educator brand, if you will, which kind of would house my book, podcast, social media, all that stuff. Those might seem like they don't have too much in common, but if you like peel back a layer, all of those are things where I can put the effort in once and build or buy an asset that will then pay me in perpetuity. With digital products, I could create some kind of a digital product bundle that I then list on Etsy or Shopify. And that thing could make me sales 10 years down the line. Real estate, I buy a property, that property's going to be paying me for it decades to come. I create a YouTube video, a podcast, any piece of content, that content might live on and pay me in perpetuity into the future. So I would tell that 22-year-old, as much as you possibly can, focus on some of these type 2 scalable side hustles. The tough thing is, and this is why I liked the way you set it up, because they do still have a day job, build these while you have your day job. Because the hard thing about these type 2 side hustles is they don't pay you immediately. So the nice thing about type 1 is like, okay, I need money. I go out and drive for Uber. I go and deliver for Instacart. You get money immediately. Like right after your shift's over, I don't know if they pay out bi-weekly or weekly, whatever. You basically get the money immediately. With something like a type 2 side hustle though, like if you're investing in real estate or you're building digital products or you're creating a YouTube series, you're not going to get paid out right off the bat, but you wait 6 months or a year and you're just consistently putting in the effort. That is when people start to take off. And that's where you start to see like the hockey stick momentum for entrepreneurs. So that's what I'm telling that young 22-year-old.
Nice. I think that's really good advice. And honestly, I think it's the mindset that is already so inclusive of the FI community. Like we understand upfront sacrifice equals like the long-term growth or the long-term freedom. And so much of business building is very heavy upfront. And then as you start building the systems, you can slowly exit while it's crazy to say, but you're like making the same amount, if not more money. Like me starting my podcast production business at the beginning was a lot of work and I wasn't making a lot of money. And now it's nice. I can kind of run it in a part-time capacity and I'm making way more money than I did the first 3 years. So yeah, I like that approach and I think it's got to resonate really well with the FI community. Let's turn the table though to expenses. You were making $403,000 a year and you spent $2,000 a month. I am so interested. How did you stay disciplined on spending, especially when it came to things that you really enjoyed that could be justified? Like something like I know you're big into travel. Like it would be so easy for you to justify doubling your travel budget in a year where you made $400,000.
Yeah, this is an interesting question. And just to be clear, it was only 1 year where the gap was that insane. It was like the final year of my, what I like to call my financial freedom sprint. So it wasn't like I was making that money and spending $20,000 for 10 years in a row. It was just like one crazy year. What I like to call the big three: housing, transportation, and food. I know a lot of people have probably heard that before who are in the FI community. On the housing front, I was house hacking. So we were living in a 1-1. It was a nice 1-1. And I just want to get back to the non-deprivation thing in a second. But so we're living in a nice 1-1, but part of the same property, like 50 feet away, is a 4-bed, 2-bath apartment and 600 square feet of office space. So one, a lot of people think like, oh, I don't want a house hack because I don't want to share a bathroom with a roommate, or I don't want a house hack, I don't want to share a wall, or I don't want people living above me and hear them stomping around all day. Like there are creative, interesting house hacks out there. This house hack just happened to be like perfect for us where we're like, okay, we'll live in the 1-1, we'll rent out the 4-2 and the 600 square feet of office space. And so while we had other friends who were living in 1-1s in Massachusetts, which, you know, it's a pretty high cost of living state. Like I had friends who were paying $2,500 a month in Boston for a 1-1. And we're just, you know, we're living in Central Mass in a 1-1. So like from the outside, again, our lives weren't that different, but that like slight intentionality, we're taking in $800 a month. They're spending $2,000 plus per month. Just housing alone is a $3,000 delta in our expenses. Wild. On the transportation front, me and my wife are just still driving the same paid off cars. So our only expenses were gas, maintenance, and insurance. And since they were older cars, like they were fine. It's not like the mufflers were dragging on the ground and they were rusting out. No one would be like, oh, Cody drives a piece of crap. That's the worst car ever. Like it's fine. It got me from point A to point B. So again, from the outside looking in, I'm not living that differently. I just didn't have the new lease or the brand new car that I was paying. You know what's crazy? I just saw the average new car payment just breached $750 a month in the US.
That's crazy.
Crazy.
That is so crazy.
So crazy. So on the car front, like compared to friends and peers, we're saving $500 or maybe $750 plus per month. The last of the big three is food. And as you alluded to before, we were still going out and doing stuff. But when we go to the bars, we'd pregame. We'd buy like literally one drink out at the bar. We'd also still go out to restaurants with friends, but they might get an appetizer, an entree, and a dessert. Me and my wife would like get an app and an entree and split it. We wouldn't have any leftovers either, like they would. And it was a lot less money. Even if it's like, you know, we're spending $40 versus them spending $75. Do that over the course of 3 years in a row every weekend. That's a lot of money. And then I know the last thing you alluded to here was the travel front. I was a travel hacking junkie. I actually still have my Google sheet of 35 credit cards that I had opened. I was like crazy gamifying that system. And so to answer your question though, like how the heck did you have a, whatever that was, like a 93 or 94% savings rate? It was just having my eyes on the prize. Like I wanted financial freedom so bad that I was willing to do whatever it took. And it was fun. It was a fun game to me. Like I mentioned, like we're living in a nice 1-1. We're not living in a storage unit. We're driving fine enough cars. We're not, biking 20 miles in a snowstorm to work like a lot of people think everyone in the fire community does. And, we're not starving ourselves eating rice and beans. Like we're still going out and doing stuff. We're just being slightly more intentional. So at no point during that time did I feel, oh man, I'm so deprived right now. I'm only a couple more years of this, but it made it all worth it. It made keeping that gap that big, like worth it, because I knew that if I did this for a prolonged period of time, then eventually I would have a stock portfolio and a real estate portfolio and a business big enough that I could then hit FI. So once I set out that destination, I was just, again, willing to do whatever it took to get there.
Yeah, and what I was alluding to in the introduction too is this doesn't have to be permanent. This doesn't have to be forever. I love that you keep using the word sprint.
Yeah.
And there might be, maybe you can't make $400,000, or maybe you're just not in a situation where you can spend $2,000 a month right now, and you can't have the same kind of gap that Cody had. But you could go through seasons where you are very intentional, that you're excited about making progress on financial independence, and you implement some of the things that he's talking about today and sprinting towards your financial independence journey. And if you're feeling overwhelmed, burnt out, then you pull back a little bit and you go into a season where it's not your top priority. And then maybe you sprint again later on. Like I love the seasons of life and feeling what you need at that certain time and going after it. I'm not big into deprivation at all costs in pursuit of financial independence, but there's many of times that I've been super excited about making progress on financial independence, and I'm down to pregame at my house and not buy out anything at the bars, or to buy one of the cheapest things on the menu, or split something with my wife. Like that is okay with me. I still want to live the experiences there, but I want to be intentional about where I'm spending my money. I'm curious, how does life look like for you now? Are you spending $2,000 a month still, or has expenses grown for you?
My expenses have grown on a nominal basis, but in terms of percentages, I still keep a really healthy gap between my income and my expenses because my income has still continued to climb. So when people ask that, like, are you still as frugal? I'm like, well, it depends how you're asking. Like, if you're just looking at the numbers straight up, like how much do you spend per year? I am spending a lot more per year. I'm also making a lot more per year because I've been focusing on these type 2 scalable side hustles that's the nature of them. Like as they start to mature and as you start to build better systems and all that stuff, your income just naturally goes up. That's the difference between the type 2 and the type 1 side hustles. And something you just mentioned there, Justin, that I think is really interesting to point out is a type 2 side hustle allows you to work in seasons. So if you're feeling really fired up for a couple months and you just like go all in, you build these awesome systems out, maybe you build some new packages for your podcast production company, you are going to be able to eat the fruits of that labor for years to come. Versus if you're just doing type 1 side hustles and all of a sudden you're like, I'm going to drive 100 hours a week for Uber. Once that month is over, you're not really getting any gain from that in month 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But like with a type 2 side hustle or a business, like you put in that work, that effort once, and it's going to pay you in perpetuity. That's the beauty of it. That's why I like type 2 side hustles so much, because even though I am FI now per the numbers, like I still like to work. Sometimes I'm really inspired to work. Like just in the past couple months with my book launch and everything, I was working to 60 to 80 hour weeks. Did I have to at all? No. But then, in a month from now, we're going to Europe for almost a month, and I'm probably going to work like 30 minutes a week or 30 minutes a day. And it's like, I have that optionality where I can just like really like lay it on and hammer the gas, or I can just like completely just coast, which is kind of the nice optionality that I have with FI and why I'm such a proponent of type 2 side hustles and businesses.
Optionality is such a good word. I think at the end of the day, that's what a lot of us are looking for, optionality and freedom. The choice being with us and nobody else. And that's what this whole journey is about. Cody, you wrote this awesome book, Retire by 30. As I mentioned in my introduction, this isn't just for people that are in their 20s looking to retire early, but probably anyone that is looking to fast track their way to financial independence right now. I read this book and immediately got flashbacks to I Will Teach You to Be Rich, which was the seminal book for me that really jump-started my financial independence journey. So I'm hoping this book does the same thing for many people that are now experiencing or getting introduced to financial independence. You also got this awesome show, the Financial Independence Show. You stole some great keywords there on the podcasting front right away. I don't know if I missed anything else there, but would love it if you share just a little bit about Retire by 30 and what someone could expect if they pick up the book.
One thing I failed to mention earlier, and before we hit go, we had kind of talked about this. Like sometimes when I mention my numbers, I just like being transparent, but I have had a lot of people say, that's so unrelatable. You made $400,000 in a year. Like, okay, I'm throwing in the towel. I could never do that. I very intentionally laid out 10 different case studies of people who are drastically different than me. Different income streams, different backgrounds, different races, different genders, literally completely different paths to FI, because I want someone to be able to pick up my book and resonate with someone else's journey. I know that $403,000 isn't relatable for a lot of people, but I didn't want to lie about my numbers and be like, oh, actually, I was making $40,000 a year. And no, like, why would I lie? I want to share the real thing. But I was very intentional in making sure that I exemplified a lot of different paths to FI, whether that's just like straight up W-2 into index funds. There's real estate investors in there. There's small business owners in there. There's a whole bunch of different ways to get there. The book is kind of broken out into 5 sections. So section 1 is like kind of the basics of FI, and it's like determining your financial freedom number. This is where I talk about the cash flow versus nest egg method. The second section is expenses. So I talk about the big 3. Then I talk about a bunch of other expense reducing strategies. Third section is income. So this is increasing your income via side hustles or your day job, or networking is another really important one that helped me on my journey. Section 4 is investing. So stock market, real estate, alternative investments, some tax optimization stuff that I wish I knew earlier on that I'm now implementing into my journey today. And then the last section is early retirement, how to actually withdraw the money, how to build a life that you love, not just you're going to retire to something, not just like hoping that your life is perfect once you hit that FI number. So that's kind of the book's skeleton layout. And yeah, I really hope people enjoy it. High praise, by the way, saying it was like, I will teach you to be rich. That's I'm a fan of Ramit and his money dial. So I appreciate that, man. And thank you for the awesome conversation and great questions.
Once again, folks, this is Cody, Retire by 30, the Financial Independence Show. Go check him out on your favorite podcast platform and definitely pick up his book wherever you get books. Cody, man, this was a blast. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.